Yes.
When you said you described the mental level,
yes.
and you said at the mental level there's no, there's this sense of complete merging of, or
Not merging,
no,
juxtaposition.
yeah, it's of connection, very
Yes.
close connection
That's
between every personality, and so then when the personality goes back into the soul, and I was thinking, what is the difference between that soul there, which is what I'm understanding your personal soul, and Whitehead's concept of the consequent nature of God, that is, according to him, experiencing every experience in unison in the universe?
Yeah. I could answer that question, but it would be so technical it wouldn't really go here. Because I have to get, it's a great question. If we can talk about it, but I don't want to get into the consequent nature of God here. So, yes.
Eric, on the soul theory
Yes.
of reincarnation, is there any time frame on the vertical spaces between the physical, the vital, and the mental?
Well, the theory is that there really isn't space on the way up, but there could be space on the way down. In other words, the next incarnation is not necessarily immediate, but that the idea is that upon the death of the physical body, we are in the other body. We're already there. It's just that right? So there's no particular time gap.
Okay, but is there a gap of a time of when we lose the vital body?
Uh-huh.
I mean, in other words, from the time we lose the physical body
Right.
to the time we lose the vital body.
Yeah, there is time, yes.
But do they talk about what that time length is, that it's months?
Nobody knows, and it's not. Nobody has said that I've read, and it's clear that it's not clear that time flows at the same rate, as it were, in these other worlds. The whole, because we can go. It gets very technical, but there's no reason to assume. It's like in a dream. You could have a dream that goes on what seems like for hours and hours and hours, or days and months, but of course it happens in a very short time. So the subjective time. Objective time, it doesn't translate, right? But the idea is that we can be in the vital world long enough to have meaningful and significant experiences. So, for example, people talk about going to school in the vital world and things like that. So it's some substantial length of time. There was one movie that tried to visualize this in a very interesting way. It was called What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams, which is really an attempt to visualize this model of living in the astral world, right? And as a movie, it was kind of interesting. I mean, it really explored these themes in some fascinating ways. It's a very, very interesting movie.
The book actually went into more detail than the movie.
There was a book called that. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so I recommend that movie just because it's an interesting attempt to visualize some of what I'm speaking about. Yes.
If you could switch back to the model itself. I just want to throw in just like a practical application of using this metaphysics. There's a group of people I meet with, and two of them do voice dialogue work, and one does family systems theory. And so they're working with all these subpersonalities. And I do a lot of depossession work. And so they're always asking me, what are you doing? Are you taking away these subpersonalities? Like, what is it that you're doing?
Right.
Like, they can't understand that they're... So then you look all the way to the right of that, and you
Yes.
see, like, the red circle and the black circle.
Yes.
And if I take this to them, now I can have a conversation
That's right.
that they can actually enter into.
That's right. That's beautiful. I really like that a lot. Yeah.
And then the question is, and it might be out of the scope of this, but we're talking about sort of a mutation of consciousness or
Yes.
an integral. Is it, and a lot of the work I'm doing is around sort of the wisdom of the physical and the vital
Yes.
selves.
Yes.
And so is it, as you sort of move away from, like as the self is less dominant, then it's not, it's somehow allowing the wisdom of the vital and the physical to, it's not as persuasive, it gives a little bit more freedom to those.
Yes, I was reading something about this. Well, I want to say two things. First of all, you mentioned the mutation of consciousness, and we haven't discussed that in these lectures, so I want to say just a word about that. And very briefly, the idea is that what's happening on our planet right now, along with an ecological crisis and various sociological crises, is also a crisis of consciousness. And that we're moving from the kind of consciousness that has characterized industrial life into a whole new type of consciousness. This is called a mutation of consciousness. And part of what I want to say is that a mutation of consciousness involves a reorientation of perception. And so in particular, during the industrial era, we have been giving all of the privilege to our physical senses. And as we move into this new mutation of consciousness, we're going to have to reorganize our sensory suite so that we begin to give much more prominence to our transphysical senses, as was done in earlier ages. So I just wanted to comment on that. And then your question was, oh yes, about the wisdom of the body. So it's kind of a paradox. Right? I would want to say that these are higher grade occasions, and therefore in some way have a deeper penetration into reality than do the lower grade occasions making up our organs and so forth. But on the other hand, the lower grade occasions making up our body are in some way more evolutionarily advanced than we are. So if we step back for a minute, we could say, you know, I'm saying this wrong. We know that animals have a certain kind of perfection and grace that we don't have. Right? Animals are better at being animals than we are at being humans. In a certain way, animals have a kind of perfection in their own type that humans don't have. So humans have reached the human level, but we've very imperfectly mastered it. Whereas the animals, having reached the animal level and been there for a long time, are better at it. So even though our higher grade occasions in some way are more evolved, they're less competent at functioning at their own level than our lower grade occasions are. Right? So our body knows how to live in the world better than our minds do in some way, because our body is inheriting billions of years of animal evolution, but our minds are only inheriting a shorter period of mental evolution. So I think that sort of addresses what you're saying, that there is a tremendous wisdom that we need to listen to and make an accommodation with. But it doesn't mean that we have to regress in an evolutionary sense. It means that we have to appreciate the wisdom that our bodies have cultivated over their billions of years of evolving. Does that kind of address what you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, there's more to be said here. It's a subtle and tricky issue, but that's, yeah, Gary.
Eric, where would you locate the unconscious, as well as the archetypes?
Yeah. As I said before, I would say that our body is our personal unconscious. And then I would say that the transphysical worlds are the unconscious, the collective unconscious. So when you read Jung, for example, he's very, very vague about the ontological status of the unconscious. He talks at some point, for example, how each one of us is a complex in the unconscious of all the others, so that you are a complex in my unconscious and vice versa. And once you and I are both complexes in the same unconscious, then the unconscious becomes a place. It becomes spatial. But Jung never quite takes that step and really confronts the ontological status of the unconscious. So what I am suggesting is that the transphysical worlds are a spatialization of the collective unconscious. They are the collective unconscious. Right? And so then, in this collective unconscious, there are beings which are very heavily influenced by certain forms. So let's say there could be a disembodied being that is very heavily influenced by the form of love, which would be a kind of angelic being. It would embody a certain archetype, right? So I would suggest that the subtle, in the transphysical worlds, go back, that archetypes per se are ideas or eternal objects, right? However, there can be beings in the transphysical worlds that uniquely or in some perfect way embody those eternal objects and become, in effect, gods or goddesses. So that's how I'd locate it. Julianne.
So I'm thinking about like psychic healing. So
Yes.
one embodied being healing
Yes.
another embodied
Yes.
being. And when I've attempted that and seem to have had success,
Yes.
it seems as if I'm even touching their body. And I'm, so I'm
Yes.
wondering like, I mean, obviously I'm here and they're 10 miles away. So
Right.
is that the vital body actually connecting somewhere else in?
There are two ways we can understand that. Let's So let's say this is you, and this is your client, right? And each one of you, is one of these hierarchies that we drew on the other page. So these are two different images of the same thing, right? So here are the physical molecules, here's the vital, and here's the mental. Okay, now, one thing you could be doing is you could be having a direct causal exchange between your vital body and their vital body. So you could, let's say, be loving them, and their love and your love would be felt by them, and would have some kind of healing effect in helping their molecules and their cells to organize better. But also, remember, we have these kind of causal connections, and then we also have the causal connections that go downward, in which your mind influences the aim of these occasions, right? Well, you could also have a situation in which your mind is organizing the aim of the occasions making up their body, right? So let's say they may be very upset, and so they may not be organizing their own bodies very well. But your mind can communicate directly with the intelligences in their body and begin to bring order and healing into the way their body is functioning. So there's at least these two different ways we could conceptualize that. And this is not, again, the distance between these two, on these levels, it's not spatial, right? So your attention to this person would bring you close to them in transphysical space and allow you to influence their body in the same way that your mind influences your body. Right? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sometimes it just seems even more physical. So, a tear in a tissue, and then the tissue gets healed.
Yes.
So it's like a really tangible.
Right.